Hey everybody, Zach here from Mythos, and today we are going to start the journey of upgrading this Epiphone Special. I got this on a recent Nashville Guitar Store tour video where Matthew and I decided to take some stuff and trade it in at Corner Music and get a new shop guitar. This thing is awesome, but we're gonna make it our own by upgrading the hardware, the electronics, doing some minor fret work, treating the fretboard, the fingerboard to get it a little darker and just up to my spec. So that's what we're gonna do. Let's get started taking some of the strings off of this thing and some of the other parts off, and let's make this special really special. Okay, so first things first, we're gonna make this guitar feel a lot better. On import guitars, they don't spend a lot of time rounding off the edge of the fret, so they can feel a little sharp. This guitar doesn't feel bad, but one of the things I got was this fret file from Music Nomad, and it's a really easy way to round over the edge of the frets, so if they are poking out, it just feels more comfortable in your hand. It won't scratch you or, at worst, cut you. But we're gonna take the strings off this guitar, treat the fingerboard, start working on some of these frets, and hopefully make this thing feel more like its Gibson counterpart. So this is the Music Nomad fret file. It has two sides that are diamond coated, two other sides that are smooth. And so the basic idea is that you take the file and gently round over the side of the fret. And so any of that sharp edge from where they clipped it gets just sanded off, and it's going to leave a bit of a rough finish, but I have some fret erasers in various degrees of grit that we can polish it up. So I'm going to do that to each side just really lightly. Okay, so now that I've rolled over the edge of these frets a little bit, just minor, like I said, this guitar didn't need much help. I want to take some fret erasers. You can get these on Amazon. They come in various grits from 180 all the way up to 2000. And they're just basically like a pencil eraser with an abrasive in it. And you go up the grits on each of the frets, and you're able to just polish them up to a mirror shine. You can do this to polish the tops of the frets as well if you need to, but I'm gonna do that real quick on all the sides of the frets just to get them nice and shiny and make this thing feel really smooth. Now that we've got all the fret ends rounded over and feeling nice, the next thing to do is treat the fretboard. So I use Fret Doctor. This is stuff that I get from bapfeiffer.com. It's available a few other places now. This stuff is magic. It's made specifically for rosewood and rosewood-like woods. And so for this Indian laurel board, it's really gonna make a big difference. So I'm gonna put some on here and see what happens. And then I just put just some dabs. It'll soak in everything that it needs, and what it doesn't, it will just sit on top of the fretboard. and it doesn't need a whole lot. This is probably too much, but I like this more than lemon oil because I feel like lemon oil does a good job of cleaning. Lemon oil is just mineral oil with like a lemon scent in it. But this Fret Doctor stuff actually gets into the wood and will darken it. Now, this is not rosewood, this is Indian laurel. It doesn't darken quite the same, but you can already see just by putting that on there how much deeper and more interesting the color is of the board. I'm going to get, at some point, some of the Monty's wax, and we will try to really darken this. But for now, we're just gonna let that kind of soak into the fretboard and hopefully darken up that board and make it look a little more expensive, because why not? So now that we've got the fretboard pretty much done, the next thing is going to be taking off all the stuff we don't want. Now, the only thing on the face of the guitar that's going to stay is the pick guard and the studs for the bridge. I've already put in some aftermarket studs. So the first thing I'm going to do is take off some of this hardware on the face. So take off these strap buttons, not because they're bad, but because I really don't like that white felt there. No vintage Gibson ever had white felt, so honestly we could just take this off and then put these right back on, because I don't know why, it just bothers me, and I think it looks nicer without that felt there. Felt belongs on a Fender, sure, but on a Epiphone or a Gibby, I don't think it belongs. We'll take off the other one here, do the same thing real quick. Okay. Make sure that's not spinning. Now, getting off the knobs, one of the things I like to use is just a guitar polishing cloth. And I've seen a lot of people do different methods, but this works for me. You just slide it under the knob, wrap it around, and give it a pull. It comes right off. So we're going to change all these electronics. Get rid of these old knobs, because we've got some new fancy knobs to put on this thing. And another must-have tool is a spanner. This is an old ESP one that we've used for building a lot of Mythos pedals. And this is super handy for just removing nuts or anything flush on a guitar body without dinging it, see? We'll just loosen all these nuts for the pots. I know there's good CTS pots in there, but we want to rewire it, spruce it up, make it nice. And then I'm going to take off this switch as well. The poker chip's already missing because I took this off and the poker chip was covered in glue. So now we're just going to get rid of some of this stuff, flip it over, and remove the rest of the electronics. I'll loosen the P90s and we'll pull all this stuff out. One tool you always need to have around is some painter's tape, masking tape. I use this stuff all the time for all sorts of projects, but when you're working on guitar stuff, I've removed the P90s here, but I don't want them to fall out while I flip the guitar over, so I'm going to tape them down. Now, they should stay put. Let's get these things zipped off. Now we're going to have to pull a soldering iron over to the bench so I can get all this stuff desoldered, get all these electronics out of here, and put in some upgraded stuff. Since we're pulling out all these electronics, the only thing that's really going to stay in here is the ground wire. It's coming through that little hole over there. It's this little black wire that is going to the bridge stud. And there's plenty of wire here. So instead of desoldering that, clip, there we go. Already loosened the jack. Just gonna pull all this stuff out. Now you have all the pickup leads and stuff. Now these are clipped. Epiphone's been doing this where the pickups are like a quick connect and you squeeze it, pull right out. And the only other thing we have to be aware of is the switch wiring, which is all coming in here. Now I'm going to get rid of all this wiring. So because of that, clip, and then I'm going to pull this switch out. Okay, so this wire, now most Gibsons are wired with this sort of, there's three different colors and some shield and stuff. This is the modern way of wiring up any Gibson or Epiphone guitar. I don't like this stuff. I actually had a Gibson Les Paul Special that this gave me a lot of issues with static, and once I rewired it the 50s way, all that went away. So I'm going to rewire a new switch the old school way, and we're just going to pull out all these electronics and put in some brand new CTS pots. These are CTS, but we're going to rewire it, make it old school, and really bring this thing to life. So since I don't have a wiring template or any of those things laying around, and I don't really want to do the work in the guitar itself, I'm going to make a template. So I cut a piece of cardboard, and now I'm going to tape it down just to the face of the guitar. Like that, and then we'll flip the guitar over. Now in the cavity, you can see the cardboard, so I'll just take and mark the holes, and then have the holes here. I'll drill these out, and we'll have a handy dandy wiring template. So I do this all the time to make templates, or if I'm painting something, I will drill a hole in cardboard, and when you're using a real thick cardboard, this actually works really well. I'll get these holes the size they need to be for a potentiometer, and easy little template. So electronics. This guitar had CTS pots. They were fine, but I'm going to upgrade these things to some RS Guitarworks Super Pots for the volume, and then the tone pots will just be standard CTS pots. And one thing I like to do whenever I'm choosing potentiometers, especially for volume, is measure them. So I'm going to grab the multimeter and show you how I measure the value of the pot itself, so I know what place it should go in the guitar. So I have the multimeter here set to ohms. For whatever reason, it's been going to mega ohms, but if you put it on the outside lugs of the pot, you'll see it says 537, 36. That it's moved the decimal point, but that's 536 kilo ohms, 536K. On this one, 536, so they're the same, 535. So these are fine in the neck or bridge position. On the tone pots, these don't really matter as much. The higher the value, overall, the brighter the guitar is going to be. 444. This is part of the advantage of going with 475. So this is part of the advantage of going with something like RS Guitarworks Super Pots. They're tighter tolerance. They're a different taper, but also they're more consistent and more the value you want in certain positions on the guitar. But let's get this thing wired up. Okay, so I've pre-bent the lugs on the pots to the positions that they should be in to get ready to solder. Now, I'm going to tin the spots where the ground bus wire will go. I'm going to solder all of the grounds first. I have my wiring diagram here. This is from Lux. They make Lux caps. I know the wiring diagram by heart, but I always like to have this around so I know exactly what it should be. Got some solder, and another tool that I like to have around is a chopstick. You have this to push things down. It makes groundwork, soldering work a little easier than using something like a screwdriver, which sometimes will leave a little line or an indentation, which doesn't look all that nice. But a chopstick is real soft, and it makes it really easy to hold down something for especially soldering to a ground. So let's get it going. Got my soldering iron ready. I'm gonna heat this guy up, tin it a little bit, and then do the groundwork. So we'll heat up this lug right here, push some solder on there. So I've got my ground bus. I'm going to attach this to the bridge volume pot. Heat up that solder, hold that down. There we go. Now, you need to leave a little bit of play so that you have enough slack around the control cavity so that everything reaches. So I'm just going to kind of try to pre-bend this to get a little bit of room. Should be fine. We'll cut off any excess here. And this is where the chopstick is really going to come in handy. So take the chopstick, push it down, connect that joint. There you go. We'll do the rest of this, move on to the next thing. Now that we've got the bus wire soldered in, it's time to do the capacitors. Now, I am using some mod paper and oil caps here, and I pre-bend the legs like this, so it's really easy to get them in between the lugs of the pot. So all I got to do on 50s wiring, it goes on the first lug of the tone pot and the middle lug, the second lug of the volume pot. And another thing you can do to kind of give yourself a little bit more room is you just make these things right angle. Gives you a little wiggle room there. And put that in. This one, this lug on the tone pot will solder completely. We won't solder the middle volume pot lug because we still have the lead from the switch that'll go there. So let me solder these in. Potentiometers are in. I've installed some thumb cutters, which are kind of a classic Gibson appointment. I don't know if Les Paul Specials originally had thumb cutters, but I like them. I think they look cool. I want to use one of these rocket sockets. This is great for working on nuts and stuff. You're not going to damage your finish. We use these a lot on pedals just to tighten the potentiometers down and start doing some more wiring. Ground wire. This thing has to go back to one of the ground locations on the potentiometers. So this is one of the first connections I like to make inside the guitar, and I went ahead and stripped some of this wire back since we just cut it and pre-tinned it, where you just solder a little bit of solder to the end of that, solder, whatever you want to, however you want to say it, and we're going to put it on the ground of the neck pickup. So tinning the connection makes a big difference when you're trying to get it down to something and solder quickly. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to tin my iron, I'm going to push this down with the chopstick, and we'll get this thing connected and we can move on to the next part of this process. All right, the next part of this electronic overhaul process is going to be the switch wiring. So I've got some vintage style 2-conductor braided wire, and since we're ditching all that stock switch wiring, we got to use this stuff. So you take this and run it the length of the switch cavity to the control cavity. You're going to have one lead that goes all the way to the output jack, which we are going to replace as well, and you just cut them to length. I'm going to start cutting some of this and get it ready for wiring up to the switch. Okay, so you just need 3 pieces of wire here. We've got one long one that's going all the way to the output jack, 2 for the neck and bridge potentiometers. We're going to solder all of these to a switch, a new Switchcraft switch. I'm going to follow kind of the old school wiring method and get this thing soldered up. It's going to make a big difference. Okay, so we're back from a bit of a snow break. As you can see, got a wardrobe change here. But when we last left the guitar, I just finished the selector switch wiring. So that is now put in and routed to the control cavity. I put in the neck pickup to get that all started and see about what sort of foam I need to use to set the pickup height. So the next thing will be getting the electronics finalized in here. I'm going to show you how to use a multimeter to check which direction the switch is, so you know which one is the neck and the bridge pickup. We're going to wire up the jack and finish up this. Then we're going to work on the bridge and get this thing done. All right, so checking the switch for continuity and making sure all this wiring is how it's supposed to be. We've got the toggle selector switch in here with the new poker chip, switch nut, switch tip, and everything is routed into the control cavity. But the first thing is we need to test continuity. On your multimeter, there is some sort of continuity tester. On this one, it's on the ohms. You push that yellow button, and then when you touch the terminals together, it will beep, letting you know that there's continuity between those 2 points. Now, the easiest way to test that, and a very common thing to do, is to check for ground continuity. So we want to make sure all the backs of these pots are grounded to each other, and you can check the ground continuity between everything coming off your switch. All that's connected. But one of the things that can be kind of confusing is knowing which one of these wires coming from the switch is what position, neck or bridge. So the way you do that is you switch the switch to, let's say, neck position. Grab one of these, grab the center of that braided wire, and you tap the terminal, tap the other side, make sure it's not shorting out or any continuity. There you go. And then we do the other one, flip the other position, test that, and you've got continuity. Technically, you don't even have to switch it. Should show continuity between those points. But that's all good. The only thing we have to do now is finish up this wiring, and we'll get these switch connections wired to the pots, do the output jack, and start doing these pickups. Make sure this is focusing. The next part will be installing this neck pickup. We'll do the same thing for the bridge on the frailen that have this white, the black, and then the shield. The shield in the black, that's the ground, the white is the hot, and we'll get these soldered together, attach that to the ground at the back of the neck pickup potentiometer, do the same thing for the bridge, and then solder these terminals, and this thing is getting close to done. Now that all the electronics are pretty much done, we've got the pickups, the switch, the potentiometers all wired. The last thing that I'm going to do is put in a new jack. This is a Switchcraft jack. I had to drill out this this plate, pretty common modification. So I'm going to use some of this Lux PVC number 8 spaghetti tubing to insulate the lead coming from the switch. That's the output wire, and we'll get this thing ready to make some sound. All right, so you want to slip this on like thusly. Get this lead coming out of the hole there. So now this is all insulated, so this ground won't touch anything else, short out any of the caps or anything. But then I gotta cut some of this so it is a little better length. We'll get this wired up to the jack. First thing to do is push back this braid. I'm gonna expose that cloth center wire there like that. Then we need to push back the cloth wire, expose the internal hot right there. One thing I like to do is tin that, like that. And now we're going to take that tinned tip there, that's the hot connection, put that on the tip connection. Then we'll round the cable over there and solder this braid to the ground connection. Need another hand.
That would be awesome.
I'll try to tin this terminal. We'll tin the braid as well, and then we'll heat up all of it, and it should just kind of pop together. There you go. Ready to go back in the guitar. Now that the electronics are all in and soldered, we need to check them, make sure that they're working fine. Have Matthew's little Black Star Fly amp here, handy dandy. We got to run through all the pickup configurations here and make sure they work. So the easiest way to do that, grab some sort of screwdriver, put it in the position you want to test, and tap. Make sure that's not working in other positions it shouldn't work in. And then check to make sure your potentiometers work. Same thing on the neck. And that's it. One of the last things we need to do is put a new bridge on this. Now, these come with a lightning bar wraparound tailpiece. Lightning bar refers to these little steps that help intonate the bridge. None of this is great. I don't really care all that much, so I just got an old school lightweight aluminum wraparound tailpiece. These are kind of hollow underneath, so this is going to be a massive tone upgrade, but if you're changing this on an import guitar, you need to be aware of the studs. Sometimes you have to switch studs to a metric stud, but these I got from Philadelphia Luthier Tools. The post underneath here is actually smaller, so that fits. If you use the stock studs, this bit right here is actually a little wider, and the aftermarket bridge won't fit. So I'm gonna get this strung up. We've got the fingerboard all treated here, so it's looking really nice, and try to get this thing set up and get some tones happening. just to wrap up, I want to go over all the modifications and some final thoughts about this instrument. So, this Epiphone Les Paul Special is awesome. Right out of the box, it was a great guitar, but these modifications have really made it something pretty fantastic, if I'm being honest. So, raise the string gauge from 9s to 10s. We're going to see how the neck moves, what adjustments need to be made. Right now, the action's a little high, but it's playing well, it's sounding good. I'm not going to sweat it too much. But all the parts. Most of the components I got from Philadelphia Luthier Tools. These are Fralin P90s, and the CTS pots on the volume are from RS Guitar Works. Everything else came from Philadelphia Luthier Tools. Switchcraft switch, the poker chip, the switch tip. This is a lightweight aluminum wraparound tailpiece, metric studs, the replica black knobs, CTS tone pots, 500K, the .022 mod paper rent oil capacitors. I had the Switchcraft jack, but you can get those there too. And lastly, the fretboard we treated with the Fret Doctor fretboard oil, which has really made a big difference and made this thing look really nice. So don't sleep on Epiphone. If you're interested in one of these, grab one and do this yourself. You could have a guitar that you'll love and cherish and play for a very long time. And if you like videos like this, please like and subscribe. Join me, leave me a comment, and stay tuned for more stuff like this.